This is the final word. It's a weekly show. It's not a daily show. So we're able to be a little bit more relaxed. It's brought to you by Maurice Blackburn, the #1 plaintiff law firm in Australia. And on the show today, Geoff Lemon, that's me, and Bharat Sundaresan, that's the other one. And if you're looking at this on video rather than the classic audio method of the podcast, you will know that I'm in a hammock. And if you're listening to it on audio and you're really perceptive, you might also know that I'm in a hammock. You might be able to you might be able to hear the hammock vibes. You might be able to see that we're on a lovely balcony looking over the Caribbean Sea. We're in Grenada. We've arrived. We're here a few days ahead of the second test. But the sun is heading towards the horizon. It's a beautiful warm day in the rustling greenery up on the hillside above the water, and it feels like a pretty good time to be having a chat to you.
This would have been sounded, or like the way you've described it, you in a hammock and me just sitting here chilling with you. Mm-hmm. You call it the weekly show. It would have been a weekend show.
Yes.
If this was anywhere but the Caribbean. Mm-hmm. But here in this part of the world, especially here in Grenada, which is even more on island time than bustling Barbados, this is just any other day in the week. So it is apt that it's a weekly show, because that's what they do. They sit in hammocks, they stare at the ocean or the sea, they walk down to Grand Anse Beach, which is the one that we're looking over, like my left shoulder, your right shoulder, and this is where we will be in probably a few hours time, having a rum punch or two and soaking in the delights, the local delights of Grenada, which I have already done a little bit. So
you've never been here before. You've been to almost every other part of the Caribbean, but this one eluded you.
This did, because they don't play a lot of Test cricket in Grenada, and last year during the T20 World Cup, they don't think there were any games in Grenada. So I came as far south as St. Vincent without going to the Grenadines. Someone the other day said St. Vincent and the Grenadines sounds like a band.
Yes.
Right.
Well, St. Vincent is a musician, very, very accomplished, interesting, a lot of variety, a lot of diversity in her work, St. Vincent. But she, as far as I know, hasn't been backed by the Grenadines.
Ah, there you go.
Perhaps there's time.
There's time. Maybe Grenada will back her before the Grenadines do. So, and you would have seen as well, the pilot would have told you that you were flying over the Grenadines before you landed into Grenada, unless your pilot
didn't tell us anything.
Oh, you were on the Inter-Caribbean? Nah, nobody.
Except that it's really hot, but don't worry, the aircon will come on when we get in the air. But that did not happen.
It did not. No. I mean, the beauty of traveling.
I've never seen a bunch of sweatier Australians, because everyone on that. And when we got to the other end, there was a woman trying to sort out the passport queue, saying, "Anyone on vacation? Yes. Which passport? Australian? No. English, US only." And then everyone she asked was Australian. She's like, "Are you all Australians? Why is everybody in this airport Australians?" Sorry, lady, you picked the wrong day.
It was not too dissimilar in the Caribbean airlines that we flew in before you did in the morning. But a lot of Australian, including me now, Australian passports have gone through immigration and customs this morning and throughout today here in Grenada. So I've always looked forward to coming here. I've always heard about the food here in Grenada, and well, I've spent a few hours here. It does feel a lot like St. Vincent, though it seems, and I've been told as well, it's even more developed than St. Vincent. So, and you can sense that, especially where we are. We're not too far from the capital of St. George's. So, lots more to explore in this beautiful island, the Spice Island of the Caribbean. So, and I've been doing a lot of research on the quirks about this island. Like I said, they are the second biggest manufacturers of nutmeg after Indonesia, to the extent that they have a nutmeg on their flag. So that's how much pride they take in being the Spice Island.
Is there a giant nutmeg somewhere?
There is, right on the flag.
Meg.
Yeah, you'll see.
But like a sculpture.
Oh, if this was Australia, there would have been a nutmeg and cocoa. They're still one of the few countries in the world who still there's cocoa plantations here. So we have to look forward to that.
All right.
Chocolate infused rum and a lot of chocolate and nutmeg.
Things that we can look forward to. And more broadly in our world, I'd like to say a welcome on the show to Anakshi Rajvanshi, who's the newest member of the Final Word team, who's our head of digital, who joined up recently. And we've mentioned this in correspondence, but I hadn't mentioned it on the pod before. So she's doing all the behind-the-scenes stuff, everything that you're seeing that's digital anything that's online. But she was also at the Mixed Disability Day at Lord's,
Nice.
which apparently was a great success, and she's recorded some interviews and things from there, which are going up bit by bit. So if you want to check out the work that she's doing, that's on the YouTube channel or elsewhere on various of the social media feeds. There's at least one clip up on Instagram and elsewhere, and she'll be at the England-India women's game at the Oval for us at the end of the week, which is it's nice to be expanding what we're able to do.
Oh, very much so. And I've only heard rave reviews about Inakshi's work from you and Toovs, so and Adam, of course. So that's been really good. So I'm sure our paths will cross at some point. And if you're, I guess she'll be watching the video. Nobody else. So hi, Inakshi and Bharat. She has no choice but to watch this. So
it's good to know we've got one locked-in listener.
Yeah, there you go. It's always good to have that one person.
A shout out as well to Amelia and Mike, a couple of our friends of the show who were in Barbados.
Yes, they were
watching the capitulation there, and then from Kensington Oval to Kennington Oval.
That's crazy.
The next day, we're watching Dom Sibley make a 100 for Surrey. So a beautiful cross the cricket world a little bit from then.
Yeah, one oval to the other. Two games of first-class cricket played at very different speeds, clearly, even though it looks like the other Centurions in that Surrey game were batting very quickly, so that would have felt a bit like what we experienced here. But it's just crazy, right? You're talking about cricket fans, and so many cricket fans have travelled all this way. Australians, you mentioned, to watch Australia play here.
So a story that's been coming through this West Indies-Australia series, but not really coming through. If anybody who's following it will be aware of some of this swirling around, and will probably also be aware of the legal implications that's making everybody be very vague about it. So there's a story out of Guyana with an accusation against one of the West Indies players of rape. It's a very grim story, but there's no official charge that's been laid. There's nothing sort of concrete to be able to talk about. And so the legal advice that we've had is that even discussing circumstances around it that might potentially identify the player in question could leave us and other outlets open to being sued for defamation and potentially open to prejudicing a case if there is a case brought. So that's why people haven't been talking about it clearly and haven't been naming names, even though if you're looking for things online, you'll find names named pretty quickly, and people able to join various dots. So there's no great mystery about what's going on, but it's one of those unusual situations where the general public is freer to talk about it than people involved in media who can't report this as news because there isn't enough locked-in information to be able to justify it as news. So it's a difficult situation. I just wanted to acknowledge that this is happening. The story is live and it is being investigated, obviously, but there's a reason that we're not able to get into any detail on it here.
Yeah, and even the reporting so far, it started with a very senior Guyanese journalist called Raul Tony. So he's the one who broke the story. I think it was just a few days ago, but even though there had been murmurs about these things happening behind the scenes for a while, but he broke the story, and he also then wrote the story where he spoke to the lawyers. So this is the first time I think a legal team's been involved by one of the victims or alleged victims, you call them? And so they, which is what kind of you felt like it progressed the story to a point where probably the player's name will officially come out, but because I think it's a bit of a holding pattern for now where charges haven't been officially laid, and obviously every country, the legal system, it's very difficult for us to understand what the legal system in Guyana is and how long it takes.
And particularly which country you're in the Caribbean, where it may apply to where you are when you make the comment versus where the case may or may not be brought and so on. So it's complicated at the moment, but I suppose what we can talk about is that the West Indies Cricket Board have a squad with a player in it who's under this cloud, but they're essentially brushing it off and saying that they don't know anything and there's nothing they can do about it anyway. Can you give people a summary of what the WICB position is?
I mean, the CWI now, I think it's Cricket West Indies. So, look, it was reported by the two newspaper journalists here from Australia, Dan Cherney for News Corp and Tom Decent for the Channel 9 Sydney Morning Herald Group. And both of them, I think Dan Cherney reported, or has written two stories. The second story was someone from an association who defend women who've been victims of sexual assault, wrote a letter to Dr. Kishore Shalho, the president of Cricket West Indies. Obviously, the player's name does appear in the letter, but and Dan Cherney, for legal reasons, hasn't used the name in his piece. But it's a pretty direct letter, which once again details all the allegations, and just goes one step further, where it says that this particular player also has been seen bragging about how he's gotten away with it in the past. So this is all in the letter written to the president. However, there's nothing that's come out from Cricket West Indies. The only statement was in one of those stories which said, we have really nothing to say here because no charges have been laid and nothing's been brought to us. So they are kind of brushing it off for now, Cricket West Indies, as
even though something has been brought to them, even though the suggestion, the possibility, you would think should be enough. I think for any cricket board, especially picking national representative teams, where this is something we've talked about on the show before, where it's if you're giving someone an honour and a privilege of representing a country or an association of countries in this case, then they need to deserve to be a representative. It's not just about how good you are as a player, but what your actions reflect. And so obviously you don't know in any case when an accusation is brought if that's true or not. But until you've been able to do some investigation into it, then the position that we've had in the past is that anybody in this situation should be standing down until a proper investigation has been made. So this is where administratively this administration is failing, I would say.
Yeah, very much so. And they're kind of just playing the whole, hey, it's not our problem yet, so we're not going to do anything about it for now. It's still very much in the nascent stages from what we are hearing, the legal case itself. But till the time the Guyanese government or the police there or whoever would investigate this case, if it does become a case, take any step, they can't do much about it. But I will say this, I mean, it will be interesting if, say, nothing happens, the West Indies squad remains the same, and how then once Roston Chase, the captain, or whoever does the press conference tomorrow, because they'll have to put someone up at the press conference tomorrow. Sure. Unlike in Barbados, I'm sure, I mean, I know for a fact that direct questions will be asked of the captain on the preview day, but also whoever does it tomorrow, whether it's Darren Sammy or one of the senior players, which will put both Cricket West Indies and the player who does the press conference or the coach in a position where they'll have to say something or not say anything. So this, I don't think they can just...
is a choice at this stage as much as saying something.
Exactly. So I don't think that Cricket West Indies can just get away with not either taking a stance or taking a stand, or at least releasing a more a pertinent statement. I don't think you can't get away with it by just kind of kicking the can down the road and allowing things to just go on, because now it's become international news. Right? It's been reported outside Guyana, outside the Caribbean, and just the many WhatsApp groups that I'm part of in terms of Caribbean cricket. There is a lot of back and forth I can see where the one narrative is, this is a player's career at stake, which is kind of ridiculous considering the allegations and the seriousness of the allegations as well. Obviously, we won't repeat them here.
It's very grim.
It is very grim.
In any case like this, where the priority is, what if you damage somebody's cricketing career?
Yeah.
Like, who cares?
Who cares? I mean, if any of these allegations are even half true, like that's how grim they are. And the other narrative is, I don't know how much genuine pressure is being put on the board, but is to do with, maybe all of us should take a stance against Cricket West Indies. Still, they come up with a statement because, there's also the West Indies women's team playing as well, and there were some allegations laid by a couple of the players, you'll remember, in 2023. And so, though they were probably not as extreme in nature as this one, and let me repeat it, these are really extreme allegations. I just can't see a scenario where status quo just stands and everything just goes about la-di-da as normal.
Yeah. So that's the situation that is surrounding this series at the moment. If we look at the cricketing aspects of it, Steve Smith is back from his finger injury, good to go. You spend more time watching him than most. Is he chipper and cheerful?
He was very chipper and cheerful. Very happy to see me to start with, because I missed him. I'm not kidding. I missed him in Barbados. It felt weird with him not there and Manas having to wait till the sideline, because
having nets during the lunch breaks when you couldn't go.
Yeah, exactly. Or even at training sessions, having to wait till everyone was done and then having a hit. Because for the last 6 or 7 years, net sessions have revolved around these two.
Sure.
And the rest have done their bit as well. But the fact that Manas had to wait his turn and there was no Steve, it felt a little odd. So we were giggling and we were so gleeful to see each other the other day. The good thing is with him, the splint, he's wearing a smaller splint now. He'll have to wear it for 8 weeks. 8 weeks from the time he got the injury. Thankfully, it wasn't a fracture, so no surgery needed. But till, when did he speak to us? Day before yesterday, he could not sweat. Or yesterday, actually. Yesterday, he could not sweat. So yesterday, he had his first gym session. So he's been rehabbing in New York. Obviously, he found a baseball ring in a very New York part of New York, and had a couple of hit-facing tennis balls. His friend found it for him, which in itself is quite the story that like a player.
Surely
of
there's
Steve
a couple of nets in New York. There must be a cricket net in New York.
I don't know why maybe he didn't access, or maybe he didn't want to. Obviously, he couldn't face the cricket ball, so just a couple of tennis balls. So maybe it was more to do with convenience of where he was staying. So he's back. So he'll have his first big hit tomorrow. So we'll find out. So he was talking about how it's easier to just stick his hand inside a glove with this splint, but he hasn't kind of held a bat with this splint on. But I've been saying it from the time he got injured that the form that he's in, the rich vein of form that he's in, there's a reason only the greedy batters get to 10,000 runs. You all know that in Test cricket. So he wouldn't want to waste this form for too long. He's missed out on one test. He'll make sure that he'll be back, even if he's, say, feeling 80% or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if it's a kind of slowish pitch as we're expecting, that's the kind of thing where Smith can settle in and grind out a big score. Andrew McDonald chat was interesting. He was quite shot fairly straight about Sam Constas. Was realistic about the criticisms that you could make of him in the first test, and said give him some time. There's the odd bit with Pat Cummins. You guys did such a big blow up about his new baggy green and how he got the last of the Albion baggy greens, and then 24 hours later he lost it. And it's not a national story. There's not a manhunt for it like there was with David Warner's. But he's been pretty discreet about it, but it's vanished.
And he didn't even tell anyone about it.
No.
I think the story broke because he came to the press conference. Obviously, I've been able to go to the press conference during this test because of my radio commitments. So he came to the press conference. We saw Adam and I were on air on radio when he came out for the toss with his old baggy green, and we were a little confused as to after all that, because Pat Cummins was.
He did a photo shoot with the new one.
He did. He wanted everyone to take a picture, and he was so.
So did someone lift it? Was someone like?
We don't know, and nobody seems to know.
It's not going to be worth anything if he hasn't worn it in the test match.
Correct.
Yet.
Yeah. So
someone, as a collector's item, he had it for a day.
And how many people
steal the old one? If you're going to steal one.
And how many people do you think will be excited about know the difference between an Albion and a Kookaburra and what it represents and all of that. So maybe it's one of the final nerds, I'm saying. I think if I were to start investigating this case, I'm starting with the final
You're looking
nerds.
at Mike and Amelia, who fled the country
exactly.
and were
so
last seen at the...
Mike and Amelia...
we're on to you.
Yeah, we are. Maybe it's a thing. Maybe this is why the English sent them to collect this new baggy clean and take it back.
The England-India wash-up. Let's have a look at that from our privileged distance. Correct. I love this stat from Andrew Sampson. India, the first team in first-class history to have 5 centuries and lose a match.
First-class history?
Yeah.
Wow, that's quite something.
I mean, it's a lot. First 500s is a lot of hundreds.
It is. They are. You're right. I mean, the position they were in to then lose that test.
But the way that things work in England now, like, is every test a chasing test now? Is every ground a bowl first ground?
That's what England want to do. So you look at that. I don't remember a pitch at Leeds. Obviously, the weather. I was in Leeds the day before the test, or maybe 2 days before the test, just to meet a couple of my former colleagues, and it was so hot, and it wasn't the kind of hot I've ever experienced in Leeds. Now, I've not spent half my life there, but I've gone there quite a few times to cover cricket, and this is a different kind of hot, and the pitch looked dry as well, and then you saw how it played. Probably, I think the last time India had so many centurions at Leeds was possibly in 2002 when they did win, with Anil Kumble played a big role. But this is the first time since then I've seen a pitch look like this at Headingley. And I mean, Ben Stokes, from the moment he won the toss and elected to field, like he's want to do these days in this baseball era, just seemed to know what they were doing. And it was if you are into runs being scored quickly, it was a perfect test match, right? Sure. Midway through, the 2 innings finished with India with a 6-run lead, and India, it wasn't even a third innings collapse. India again batted well, and they had the collapse later on, but they had centurions in that third innings as well. And to chase what England did, and with the ease with which they chased it down on the last day, I mean, we've all been very critical of baseball, or whatever you want to call it, this New England approach, but when it comes off,
looks great when it works.
It absolutely does, and you just have to doff your hat and say,
okay,
fine.
Something that may or may not look great and may or may not work, that we're waiting on here. Jofra Archer hasn't played a test in 4.5 years. Played 1 first-class game for Sussex this season. Bowled nicely, looks good. Into the test squad immediately, and all signs were that he would play. Like, all of the language in the release was like, he will have the opportunity to add to his X number of caps, and the sort of the scuttlebutt, the Rob Key bits were all suggesting that he was going to be picked. And now he's had a family emergency, and so he's left the training camp, and they've said they're picking the same 11, which gives it a little more time. I mean, I'd initially thought maybe they'd just bring him into the squad so he could be around the team for a test or two and then try to bring him in later in the series. But maybe it's a spend it while you've got it kind of situation. But it seemed very strange to me that after so long and after such limited build-up and almost no, it's not like they've seen him play half a season of first-class cricket to make sure that his body can take the strain. It seems a huge gamble with his fitness to take him into a test match, and also to go into a test match with a bowler who can't bowl more than 20 overs in the test, whatever it is, because you don't want to risk them. So if you get India on a run, if you get India making 700 and declaring, there's a point where one of your frontline bowlers will just have to drop out of the attack for the rest of the match, because you can't afford to do what they did with him previously in his career and make him bowl epic spells. I don't know. Did it seem crazy to you?
I was very surprised. I mean, I'm completely with you. When I saw that news item pop up about him coming back into the squad, my first impression was, wow, they think he's ready after just 1 game. And we just spoke about the pitch at Leeds, and you'd assume that the pitch in Birmingham, the pitch, and that's what I'm hearing as well, will be similar, because that's the England style of playing. So we spoke about the number of overs Vokes and everyone else, Cast and co, had to bowl. So to have Jofra Archer in an attack, and if this is how test matches are going to play out and the pitch is not going to offer anything, it really kind of piqued my interest as to like what they have in mind. Because one thing that did stand out from that test match is, I don't think the bowling attack we saw at Leeds will look anything like the bowling attack we're going to see in Perth. Or that would be my assumption, because you think Mark Wood was doing commentary, I saw, would be back, and Geoffrey Archer would be back, and probably Gus Atkinson would be back.
Right.
I don't know Chris Wokes averaging 51 on Australian soil, whether he comes back. Yeah, that would be a story in itself if he's back in Australia. But
I do sort of think that surely he's got to be able to crack it eventually. Like he seems like too good a bowler to not be able to figure it out.
Especially if the pitches play the way they have in the last couple of summers. Yes, the ball did seem around for a couple of those Ashes Test matches in 21-22, but the consistent, the bowling conditions that Test cricket seems to be played in, I think those pitches will. Just think
Maybe
of
not in Perth. I think you wouldn't play him in Perth.
No,
but you'd play him after that.
After that,
he might prosper after that.
Yeah, and a good comparison would be someone like Akashdeep, who we saw this time, who initially was left out because they wanted the big, the tall fast bowlers in Harshit Rana and Prasidh Krishna to hit the pitch. But I thought Akashdeep towards the end was probably India's best bowler after Jasprit Bumrah, obviously. But so I think, in fact, you're right. I think Wokes will come back to Australia, and probably lead the attack as well in the absence. Or maybe it was the presence of Anderson and Broad that was holding him back.
Whichever way it goes, it'll be entertaining. Like, it'll be funny if he gets picked again and he's bad, but it'll be vindication if he comes again and has a good
Finally,
tour.
yeah.
But speaking of Anderson, one last bit. We do enjoy just keeping tabs on. It's like Sunil Gavaskar watch. What's he up to this week? Yeah. The bit this week where he was getting stroppy because it was the Anderson-Tendulkar trophy and not the Tendulkar-Anderson trophy, and he thought Sachin should come first. And then some people were saying, oh, well, obviously it's the other way because it's alphabetical. They're not all alphabetical.
No.
Warren Muralitharan trophy,
Correct.
Not alphabetical. Richards Botham, not alphabetical.
Another one.
But I quite like Anderson Tendulkar because to me it sounds like commentary. Like he's bowling. You say the bowler first. Anderson bowls to Tendulkar, who's, and he did get him out more than anybody else. So that was said in a wicket-taking capacity more than anybody. But I don't really need a response from you. I just thought it was amusing that happened.
I think it's just maybe more of the cultural thing that happened. Yeah, the other thing I've seen.
Are you outraged by the Patowdy being kicked off the trophy?
I am actually.
Yeah,
like I really.
Because we all are. We've all had our go at it, but you haven't had a gallop on this.
No. And just the look that I've seen on Mr. Patowdy's wife, the great Sharmila Tagore's wife, face, I should say, every time she's been anywhere near the Patowdy trophy and what it means to her and her family, unless there was something from her and the family, they said, no, we don't want to be associated with it anymore or not. And I didn't know why, like what the sudden rationale was to change it.
And like, in what universe have James Anderson and Sachin Tendulkar not been given enough praise for their contribution to the sport? Right, I think they're fine. I don't think they need
especially those two. They've had knighthoods and knighthoods. Knighthoods and ends named after them, stands named after them. If
big golden statue in
Mumbai
playing a horrible
even
shot.
though it looks a little like Steve Smith. And if suddenly tomorrow there's someone saying we should name one of the states after Sachin Tendulkar, you think anyone's going to come in their way? So it was strange where it came from. It's almost like the Frank Worrell Trophy tomorrow being named the Mark Taylor Richie Richardson Trophy or Glenn McGrath.
Who cares? The McGrath
Lara trophy.
Yeah. So what? Like, what's the? I don't know.
The legacy piece seems missing somehow.
And then the way that they tried to sort of get out of it by saying, well, we still need something named after him. We'll have a medal. Okay, you could have a medal for like the best player in the series. No, a medal for the winning captain. What? The winning captain wins the trophy.
Already
That's all
has
it
the
is.
trophy to win.
They have the trophy. They're then the trophy winning captain. Like, they don't need a separate. You can't get the medal without the trophy. So then what do you do if it's a draw? They both get a medal just for being captains?
Yeah, that's a good point as well.
It's just so low rent.
I don't know. It has to be some.
It's such
hopefully
recency
hope
bias.
So. Yeah, it is.
It's such just pandering to the current audience.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it has.
You should be embarrassed, ECB people, for suggesting this in the first place. Because, of course, BCCI is going to go with it if you say, let's name something after Sachin.
After Sachin, come on. And there was nothing named after him. Yeah. Well,
anyway.
Could just be the start. I hope it's not the start. I hope it's not the start of them. Other boards now jumping on and changing names of these trophies.
Yeah,
So
to something more recent.
yeah, so it's something more 21st century, if you know, because Tendulkar and Anderson did play against a lot against each other, and Anderson
but
got
not
Tendulkar
excessively, not like
No.
more than anybody else.
Yeah.
It was never a great rivalry. It was never like the most exciting rivalry of the series. Can't wait to see.
That was more Anderson Kohli, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
It was. So, very interesting that they would go that way.
We've got a break in a minute. A mention for Maurice Blackburn, the #1 plaintiff law firm in Australia, which means if you have an issue, particularly if you're a working person, particularly if you're someone who is overawed by the legal system and you don't have a bunch of money to spend on it and you maybe need to go up against somebody who does, you can go to them. They very often operate on a no win, no fee basis, so they assess your case, figure out if they think they have a good chance of, and then they'll take it on if they do, because that's part of their foundation was to try to look out for people who need representation in that system where it can be very intimidating if you don't have it. You can find them across Australia. They've got offices all over the joint, and we're very proud to be associated with them on the show. Break time, back in a sec. It is the final word. It's a weekly show. Geoff and Bharat Sundaresan sitting in the Caribbean. Some sad news that came through this week about David Lawrence, Sid Lawrence, as he was usually known as a cricketer, who died this last week, just so shortly after his book was launched. So Dean Wilson, who we both worked with for so many years as a journalist on tour, who put this book together after David was diagnosed with motor neurone disease. He knew that he would be losing his voice soon, and so he wanted to get his story out there while he could still speak, and it was a close run thing. He did get the story told, did get the book written, but the first black British-born player to play for England, they had Roland Butcher, who was born out in this part of the world, in the Caribbean, and then David Lawrence through the 80s, who was a big fast bowler, played 5 test matches, and famously had a horrible knee injury that stopped him from playing more test cricket, but he still turned out nearly 300 times for Gloucestershire, took over 600 wickets for them, and ended up as president of the club after the sort of reckoning with racism that English cricket had a few years ago, and was able to take that position. You'll remember that picture last year of James Bracey bringing the Blast Trophy in when Gloucestershire won it, and presenting it to David Lawrence in his wheelchair, which was a very, just such an emotional moment, I think, for everybody involved. But sad that at 61, the game has lost someone who contributed so much.
So young, and you're right. You spoke about Roland Butcher. There's a bunch of them, wasn't it? In the after Roland Butcher, I mean, Will Slack and Norman Cubbins, and towards the end of the 80s, obviously Gladstone Small and Philip Defritis, Devon Malcolm, and David Lawrence could probably have been up there with Devon Malcolm if not for that crazy injury, because he made a pretty good start to his test career.
Yeah.
You speak to anyone who faced him, he had an awkward action, they say, and he was always at the batter, but one of the loveliest men off the field. And what a fascinating life as well. The injury, one of the more graphically scary injuries suffered by a cricketer in international cricket anyway. And to recover from that, and he then in his 40s became a bodybuilder and won many competitions. And that's the thing, around the time I interviewed him, so must have been in his late 40s, because I my memory when it comes to my work, I'd completely forgotten about it. I was like, I did reach out to him through these bodybuilding competitions in, I think, 2012 or 13, and he was just how Phil Tufnell described him the other day, like a funny man, a gregarious man, always up for a laugh, and remember spoke really well about the transition, the injury, and how much he was enjoying life at that point. So it's very poignant that the book came out just a couple of days before he passed away. And so he might not have had the greatest test career, but he clearly meant so much to so many people who played with him.
He had an impact.
Massive impact.
On some other players who had long test careers as well, who, the number of times you'd hear him brought up would be disproportionately more often than you'd expect from someone with a short career.
Yeah, exactly. And at times, that gets lost in the bigger narrative, right? We get so sucked into talking about numbers and stats and most number of wickets and a lot of test matches that a lot of these cricketers who might not have done what they probably set out to do with their own careers often end up having a bigger impact and influencing even more careers. So it's indirectly they should be credited with many more test matches and wickets than
assists, test match assists.
Correct, yeah.
Right.
That's a great way of putting it.
So, speaking of test matches, 4-day tests have been approved for the next World Test Championship cycle, not the one we're in, but 2027, which doesn't mean all of the tests will be. You can still have 5-day tests. The marquee series will still be 5 days, but previously other countries couldn't go 4 tests and have it count as a WTC match. So we've seen like England play Zimbabwe over 4 days. Zimbabwe, South Africa are playing right now over 4 days. We've seen Ireland play over 4 days, Afghanistan. But you couldn't include those as WTC games if they were 4 days. You will be able to in the next cycle, which is something, I guess, Adam and I have gone back and forth on whether we like the idea or not, because we'd rather it wasn't necessary, but I think maybe it's for the best in that it can at least help make 3 test series more possible. I'd probably rather have 3 4-day tests than 2 5-day tests if that's the way that series are going to go. And so this will make that more likely for teams that don't make big money or that have to spend a lot of money trying to put test matches on. So there'll be longer days, 98 over days in theory, although who bowls 90 overs in a day, let alone 98.
Right.
They'll be playing for 9 hours to try to get through that. So in theory, you take your match down from 450 overs max to 392. So you lose 58 overs. And I guess if you're proportionally falling short of the overs, you'll still lose the same number of overs, more or less, across the slightly longer day. But I don't know, good thing, bad thing?
I was with you on this for the longest time where I wasn't convinced. I wasn't convinced that it could be the best idea going forward, but considering so many test matches finish in 3 and 4 days around the world, not just, we saw a great test match in Leeds we just talked a lot about. That went into the 5th day, but
without much time lost. There were a few rain breaks, but not long.
Yeah, on the last day especially. Yeah. But
it makes you 20% more susceptible to rain, or 25% more. I don't know how to do those maths. Like if you lose a whole day, that's one out of you've got 5 options to get enough play versus 4.
Yeah.
So it's not just the overs, it's when you're able to bowl those overs.
But I think it'll be I'd be intrigued to see which of the countries away apart from Zimbabwe, Ireland and Afghanistan, the newer teams, if you want to call them that, want to or end up utilizing
I would think definitely West Indies, South Africa are the big contenders from me. I mean, Sri Lanka sometimes like a 5th day because you can have those long grinding sort of games at Galle or Colombo, but and you win late. You like it playing in Pakistan. You win late on day 5. If you've got 4 days, so. you're more likely to have these stalemates. But I think if you're looking at say South Africa hosting Sri Lanka, something like that, they'll be looking at 4-day tests there if they even schedule them.
New Zealand as well. New Zealand don't. New Zealand for some reason are like they're
addicted to 2-test series.
They are, and people
not addicted because they try to play as few of them as possible. But.
True. But they're also kind of treated as the big three's favorite cousin, right? The cousin that goes on all the trips with the big three,
with the siblings.
Yeah, with the siblings. With the big 3 siblings. They're like, you can come along with us because you're so nice. And you have Kane Williamson as well who comes with you. So, but they probably will end up playing more of these than even say South Africa is my take. So at least it's good to have that option there. Will it lead to more test matches and Ireland playing a lot of test cricket in Afghanistan? I don't know, but at a time when the naysayers had already come out with their torches and stakes and said test cricket is dying, we need to do something about it. It's good to hear some an option opening up like this from 27 onwards, which also maybe is a sign that that's when the frequency of India, Australia, England will increase as well. The fact that they've opened this door up also means there's something else at play here. So maybe that World Test Championship cycle could be the first one where the big three, if you want to call them that, do start playing against each other more often than they already are.
Yeah. Not looking forward to that if that's a possibility. It's a 4-day test between South Africa and Zimbabwe in Harare. There's a day to go. Pretty likely to get a result here. But this started, Zimbabwe had a chance. They were in there for a little while. Tanaka Chivanga took 3 wickets off the top, plus a run out. South Africa were 4 for 55. They've got their kind of developing reserves team mostly, but some of the players, the WTC players are there. Vian Mulder's still batting 3, etc. Luandre Pretorius, on debut, at 4 for 55, at the age of 19, comes in and makes 153. Devald Brevis, who we've been waiting to see what he can do in Test cricket for such a long time, makes 51. Corbin Bosch makes 100, not out down the order. They declare it 418 for 9. And then Sean Williams for Zimbabwe makes 100 in reply, but no other big runs.
Sean Williams.
They were 251 all out. I think he's got the record now, doesn't he, for Zimbabwe hundreds?
Has he gone past Brendan Taylor?
Close. He'd be close. He's definitely made a bunch of them. Anyway, Vian Mulder took 4 for and then backed it up with 100 in the third innings. So they set 536 for Zimbabwe, who are 1 down with a day to go. So you'd think South Africa should have time to get a result there. But, there's been a bit in it for Zim. They're outpointed, but it hasn't been a walkover.
No, it hasn't. And I think it's a good format as well, where South Africa also testing out these new players or players who've been on the fringes. Because I looked at that playing 11, apart from Vian Mulder and David Bedingham, everybody else seems to be new. Or
Corbin Bosch has played recently.
Yeah, and he was in the squad, so there was an outside chance that he played at Lord's. Yeah. So he's been around for a while, so it's good to see these. And Brevis is... there was this feeling that he belonged more to Mumbai Indians and that group than for a while. Now he obviously doesn't play for Mumbai Indians, and he's in Chennai. I think he was a late inclusion, wasn't he, during the IPL? So
you tell me. You'll have to.
No, I mean,
I'll believe you if you say it.
There are not a lot of IPL teams that I follow on social media, but Chennai Super Kings certainly are one because they are entertaining. They put up entertaining posts about their players, and that's how I know.
Okay.
I don't know whether he played for them or not. Maybe he did. But and the other thing I heard about that test match, which kind of took me back in time, is there's no DRS because it's outside the WTC.
Okay.
And apparently a few umpiring decisions have gone against Zimbabwe, but they can't do anything about it because there's no DRS. So that's sad if that is the case. So, but
if you're an umpire, you've got to give the line ball ones against the weaker team.
You'd think so, right? Poor Zimbabwe, yeah. And just a note on Sean Williams. I got to know him really well during the T20 World Cup in Hobart, to the extent, he did. He was convinced that I was holy in spirit, if you know what I mean. And even to the extent
being around you made him feel better about himself.
Yeah, I mean, he started referring to me as Jesus. So, and to the extent, I remember he was fielding in one of those games in the T20 World Cup, and I was walking around to go speak to some of the Zimbabwean fans who were there making a lot of noise, and he spotted me in the stands, and yeah, I mean, he was quite distracted by my presence in the stands, I must say. So, but he is a fascinating character. I remember sitting in for this conversation one of those nights over a beer with him and Niall O'Brien, where just listening to two players who played cricket for a long time and who come from the not so privileged cricketing nations, and to hear Niall O'Brien kind of tell Sean Williams why he should continue playing for much longer was quite something to just be in the audience for that. Or
I've just checked this for you. He hasn't gone past Brendan Taylor. He's three centuries away across formats, all formats for Zimbabwe. So he's on 14. Taylor's 17. Andy Flower's 16. That's where we're at. The Bangladesh Sri Lanka series. This somehow was over in the blink of an eye. Spicy contest. We all know that. We all like the little bit of a fair bit going on in this series. If I can just run you through a few things that might tickle a final word fancy. First test in Gaul, Shanto, whose work we enjoy very greatly, as much as we enjoy saying his name, twin tons. We did mention that on the daily shows because Rishabh did it and Shanto did it within 3 days of each other. Huge achievement, but they batted too long in getting his second 100 and didn't leave enough time to bowl out Sri Lanka, but had them teetering, and another 20 overs could have been interesting, I'll tell you what. Big Ange, farewell. Angelo Matthews retires after the first test, doesn't want to play the second. Not sure.
They do that a lot. Sangakkara, remember? I covered that. Muralidharan. Sangakkara played 2 and then retired before the third one. I don't know.
Home ground? No, why would it be his home ground?
No, it wasn't even
his home ground.
When Sangakkara retired, it wasn't even at his home ground. It was at the SEC. And similarly, Ange. Who knows what's up in Sri Lanka.
Right. So they have this draw, and then they have the second test, which Bangladesh lose heavily. 247 they make, Sri Lanka make 458, with Nissanka making 100, and then they get bowled out cheaply, Bangladesh, in the third innings and lose it by an innings. And Prabhat Jayasuriya takes 5 for getting going again after not taking one for a little while. And then Shanto quits as captain. He goes twin tons, lost the next test. See you later. They just sacked him as ODI captain, and he was considering quitting after the twin tons match because that would have been an even bigger fuck you. But geez, there's always a lot going on in Bangladesh, particularly, isn't there?
I didn't realize Phil Simmons is back there as coach. To be honest, I saw a picture of him in the press conference.
He's coached. Well, he's coached about 7 times now.
Yeah, he has. And in between, he's gone and coached West Indies, Zimbabwe, Ireland.
It's like there are 5 seasons: winter, summer, spring, autumn. Phil Simmons. Once a year, he comes around. He
does. And it almost feels like Bangladesh and Pakistan compete with each other as to who has more head coaches. Because I saw Pakistan have a new head coach as well in Azhar Mahmood. I think he's like the 5th head coach they've had in the last 11 months or so. Jason Gillespie obviously being one of them, and who is here right now in the Caribbean. But Bangladesh things, if it's not Shakib, it's someone else. And every time you think, okay, the problem maker, or like the one that always creates a stir is Tamim Iqbal and Shakib and Mahmudullah gone, and now Shanto does what he's done. I don't know who they have left now.
Well, because the board was pissing him off. It always starts with the board, so nobody enjoys being captain of Bangladesh, it seems. A movement at Cricket Island as well, which is interesting. Warren Dutram has stood down after 19 years in the job. Someone we've interviewed a few times on The Final Word. He was initially trying to shoot for 2030. They co-host a T20 World Cup, and they're getting a little boutique stadium built in Dublin, which is going to be a big deal for Irish cricket because they'll have somewhere to stage games without having to do the temporary build-up stands that cost them so much money, that makes it so expensive to stage matches in Ireland itself. But I think reading between the lines and some of the reporting from Nathan Johns, who does such a good job over there, the implication is there's more friction at board level. They're less unified board than there was, and Dutram's probably lost some paint over the last few years. There have been a few tricky stories along the way. It's been a much more difficult last 5 years than the ones before that, when Irish cricket, while a very small player in the overall scene, on its path up to qualifying for test status and full member status, a lot of things went right. A whole sequence of things went right through World Cups, winning games that were able to keep putting them on the map and sort of keep the attention on them in a few consecutive tournaments. But yeah, it's the end of an era with Warren Dutram stepping down there. He's still going to chair the Euro Slam apparently, if that ever happens, which it's been delayed more times than Phil Simmons has coached Bangladesh. Odd little one that came through, unexpected one that came through, a little story that the ECB and the BCCI have agreed during the World Test Championship to not grant no objection certificates to players in a putative, mooted Saudi league. Now, this is the league that some of the Australians were backing. Neil Maxwell, the player agent, was involved. The Australian Cricketers Association, the union, was involved in sort of not endorsing it, but kind of floating it as a possibility. And so the Indian and English boards have said we're not going to let players participate if it happens, which it's very much an idea at this point. Sort of banning your teenage kid from going to a concert that they haven't even asked to go to yet. But I mean, it's interesting that they would even float saying no. I wonder if they're just trying to strengthen their hand so that the Saudis have to pay more when it comes to it, because surely whatever it costs, Saudi Arabia have the money. They will be able to pull out a big enough check to, like, they could buy the IPL overnight. So sort of the idea that BCCI is the big swinging dick in world cricket, I'm like, they're not. They don't have the clout compared to old KSA, but KSA don't have any cricketers, so they're going to need to buy some. It's like more a question of how much than when.
In a week where the WWE is in Saudi Arabia for their once a year event where they, I think, make 50 times more money in that one event than they do everything else put together, which kind of further emphasizes how the financial clout. I mean, they can go and buy anything they want to, really. But the big question is, because with wrestling, and the reason I brought it up is they've tried doing the same with UFC and martial arts, and obviously there's other sport like golf, but there is more of local knowledge about these other sports, especially martial arts, and pro wrestling kind of fits into it in a way.
Right.
I don't know what the cricket level or the level of interest for cricket to have anything over there would be. I mean, it could just be a part of this their thing to.
Well, the idea is that it's a Grand Slam and it's not played in Saudi Arabia, but one of them. So there'd be 4 short tournaments. Probably one of them's in Riyadh, one's in Australia, one's in England, one's in India. Is probably the way that they're.
That's how they're doing
it.
Yeah,
I would have thought.
You would think so. It's not and it's part of their, overall reach to get everything under the Saudi banner. So cricket is the one sport. I mean, obviously it generates a lot of money, which is right up there over the years, especially with the IPL.
Trying to give people something to think about so they forget about all of the murders.
One of the many reasons to do that, yes. And I mean, it's interesting for once that Cricket Australia has. But you spoke about the Players Association, and obviously Todd Greenberg was interviewed by Adam Collins recently. So he.
Did you hear about that?
It's not that funny. I mean, he was.
He was. I know it was on this show.
I know. But he did speak about it. He did mention it while being interviewed.
Yes, he basically said if someone's going to offer you a heartbreaking amount of money, you have to consider it. Which, I don't know if that's necessarily true. Depending what it's for.
Depending what it's for, and also depending where it leaves you with the 2 other power brokers in cricket in this sport, which is India and England. So,
I can't believe they're not going to cave. It doesn't seem credible that
they will.
Surely they're just positioning.
Yeah, it is. It is just that. They're just trying to strengthen their own position and see how it works before. They don't want anyone to go rogue, if that makes sense. Before India gets the call or the final go on how the Saudis get involved.
England women versus India women began this week. India smashed them in the first T20 at Trent Bridge. Smriti Mandhana, 112, her first T20 century. Harmanpreet was the only one before that who was missing that game with concussion. So Mandhana passed 50 on 30 occasions in T20s and never made 100, and said her teammates kept giving her shit about it. So she finally got one. But more importantly, for stats people like me, all formats. She's got 100 in all formats. So few women have done that. Beth Mooney did it recently. Oh, you want to try the quiz?
Yeah, I want.
I think Beth Mooney's the only Australian, surprisingly.
Yeah, Heather Knight.
Because Healy's got the 99, but not. Yes, Heather Knight is one. Well done.
I think I've seen her. Likes Mandhana. I've seen Mandhana score a Test 100 for sure in Perth.
Yep.
I think with Knight, I've seen her score it in 2 formats for sure. I don't think a West Indian has done it.
Nope.
Laura Fulford?
One other England, Laura Wolvaert.
Laura Fulford.
And one other England player.
Heather Knight.
Who's not Nat Silverbrunt.
Tammy Bowman?
Yes.
Yeah, because again, I've seen it's those things, right? It just stays with you.
You nailed that. Nailed the quiz. So now there's another one. Mandhana joins that. So the list is out to 5. They bowled out England cheaply for 113. Shafali Verma's back in the side. Sophie Eccleston's back in the side after both of them were dropped recently for being no good. They're both in that class of players who are obviously so good, but also needed a bit of a kick up the arse for one reason or another. And they were both back. Neither of them went well, but first step back. We'll see. They'll play at Bristol next. They'll play at the Oval on Friday with Anakshi will be there for us. West Indies, South Africa. West Indies beat South Africa in a T20 women's series. They lost the first game, and Hayley Matthews then bowled 4 overs, 1 for spit in both of the games, and then made a half-century in quick time in both of the games. One of the callers into Andrew Mason's show that I was on last week said Barbados, he said, the greatest all-rounders in the world, Garfield Sobers, and now we've got the greatest all-rounder in women's cricket. And you know what? Right now, maybe that's true.
It is very true.
She's carrying that team.
Across formats, across, so many different things she does. Winning matches single-handedly from batting, bowling,
has to open the batting, has to do everything, and when she's out cheaply, they lose, and that's how it is. We finally got the T20 World Cup draw that starts in September. Thank you, BCCI. Once again, handing in the homework after the deadline has been extended and extended and extended, and after all of the back and forth about it, guess what? India are going to play Pakistan in Colombo. So there's a swathe of games now in Colombo so that they can get that India-Pakistan game outside Indian shores.
Which also means that the T20 Men's World Cup next year, which was, we'll no, India and Pakistan will play each other again in Sri Lanka, but that's India-Sri Lanka co-hosted. And I also read that the Asia Cup might be back on. So the Men's Asia Cup, which means India and Pakistan, that's basically India and Pakistan in a bilateral 4-match series, and everybody else just comes and plays their part at the wedding.
It's an alibi to have them play, and then some other teams play a game around it. So what you're saying is we could have a bilateral any time, as long as Nepal plays Hong Kong beforehand.
Yeah, beforehand, and UAE plays Bangladesh after the game.
Kuwait will get.
It should be part of a multinational.
So the T20 blast in 60 seconds. The only thing that's interesting here for me is Northants are on top of one of the groups. Northamptonshire.
Wow.
The shit kickers of county cricket, the ones who are always battling away, and they've won a couple of white ball trophies, but they've never won the real deal. But they're top of the North group, and I don't know, it's Darren Lehman's turned the world around at Northants, perhaps. They're not going so well in county cricket. And then, Lancashire, Leicestershire, Durham, close in the top 4. The South group, Somerset are on top, so a couple of less fancied teams heading the groups. Adam Zampa's arrived for Surrey. Yeah. Do you have a thought? You really look like you want to tell me something about the T20 blast.
No, I mean, the one thing is, Zampa and Mitch Santner might play with each other.
Oh, Zampa Santner, the Zampa Santner axis.
The Zampa Santner. But you mentioned Northamptonshire. We spoke about the sad passing of David Lawrence, but another English cricketer from the 80s and 90s passed away yesterday. Wasn't it Wayne Larkins from Northamptonshire? So I think maybe it was this morning, or I saw it on social media. I think last night. So
such a Northants presence.
Yeah, so he sadly passed away last evening, and there were a lot of tributes flowing in. I mean, he's one of those names. I personally don't know much about his post-playing career, I must admit, but he was there at the start of the 80s, and then he was there back at the start of the 90s. Wasn't he, that name? And through the 80s, obviously, he was playing a lot of cricket for Northamptonshire, and you might have, I think he finished his career somewhere else, maybe Durham or Somerset, or one of those. But so two big losses for English cricket, especially for fans who followed cricket through the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Big time, and thoughts with his family as well. The county cricket wrap of sorts, the Kookaburra era of the season has started, and let me tell you, runs resulted. Basically, the last round, Div 1 in the last round, everybody drew except for Surrey, who beat Worcestershire easily. A few results from players we keep an eye on. Kyle Abbott took 5 for bugger all for Hampshire, 5 for 24 maybe, I'm going to say. I didn't write that down, but I think I remember it. Corey
Rocchicelli.
took 5 for Warwickshire. And Gurinder Sandhu, who knew that Gurinder Sandhu was bowling for Sussex? Not me,
Good
but
boy,
now I
yeah,
do. 5
yeah.
for 83, I'm going to say. And there was a double ton for Finley Bean. What a great English name.
Wow.
The Bean for Yorkshire took them past 500. So they're 2 days into a new round now. Tom Westley made back-to-back tons across the last 2 games. And then, Surrey mentioned it off the top, Dom Sibley, whisper it. Oh, whisper it. Whisper it. Triple hundred. 305 he made against the Kookaburra ball. It wasn't that slow. Strike rate in the 60s.
Not bad.
Hit a couple of sixes. I still haven't been able to bring myself to actually watch him because, like, physically watching him bat used to make me ill. You know, it wasn't anything against him personally. It was just...
It was a stance.
It was the
for me.
shapes. The shapes that his body made were not shapes that I thought a human body should make, and it just made me uncomfortable, especially when Rory Burns was at the other end doing
other
another
shapes.
weird
Yeah.
set of shapes. The shapes were wrong, but... He did make 305, and then, yeah, as you say, Sam Curran, Dan Lawrence, Will Jacks all made hundreds. The last 2 of them made them at strike rates of about 120. It was a pounding for Durham. Well, it still hasn't finished, but, you know, they've made 800 and declared. And for Worcestershire, Jake Libby and Adam Hose both made double hundreds, 228 not out and 266 in the same innings, declared for 679 against Hampshire. So, yeah, there's a fair bit going on there. And in a game, Warwickshire made 415 without a century, which is unusual. And then Daniel Hughes, 151 for Sussex. No one's talking about Daniel Hughes, but is he a bolter? Can we put him in the bolter? Another low score for Sam Constance this week. Will we be saying Hughes for Perth?
Well, there's a direct flight from London to Kingston, just saying.
Oh.
Why even wait till Perth?
Why even wait till Perth? Get him in there.
Yeah, I mean, if you're getting people really out of left field, why wait? Just like RP Singh in flying to England in 2011.
Yep.
Just bring him in there. Put him in there.
All 3 wickets so far fell to Rocchicelli as well. So I forgot to check the Div 2 scores because I'm an elitist snob.
Clearly
and I only
you
check
are.
the first division.
I
have
don't care
betrayed
about
my working class roots.
Glamorgan are in
Glamorgan, Gloucestershire.
Division 2. Okay, good. That's good. Yeah,
The
that's
2
good to
teams
know.
I can't tell apart. Along with, who else? Northants.
Leicestershire?
Lancashire?
maybe?
Leicestershire? Yeah, Leicestershire. Leicestershire so we're trying to get the Foxes up. That's our
Yeah.
Div 2 interest this season is can the Foxes get up? But I don't know because I looked at Div 1 and that's that. And we've run out of time anyway. We're at the end of our show.
We'll do
So
our
I can't
county
do it.
research.
I can't. If you want to know what happened in Division 2, get on the internet. You're already on the internet. Look it up.
Correct. Can I also say I apologize? If you're just listening to the audio, it wasn't Jeff Lemon slapping me. I was just killing mosquitoes.
Okay.
And there are a lot of mozzies
They
here.
are starting to get pretty lively, and they were.
So do not think.
The ones in Barbados. I've never encountered such
I have never
silent,
seen your
subtle mosquitoes.
legs look the way they did.
No, I got devoured, but I didn't see a single one. They are dastardly stealth mosquitoes.
You and Andrew McGlashan. Are you sure you don't have Manxian blood in you?
Maybe.
Maybe you do.
Big fan of Morris dancing.
There you go.
All right, that's it. This has been The Final Word. Geoff Lemon, Bharat Sundaresan, coming to you from Grenada, the first Final Word episode ever recorded in Grenada. And it was you. You had to be part of it. Thank you for listening. If you want to support what we do, getting around the world and sitting in hammocks and telling you about the cricket, patreon.com/The Final Word. I know it's not the most compelling pitch, because it looks like a pretty cruisy life right now. But, you know, there are tough bits.
There are.
The sweating on the flight over here was one. Thanks to Maurice Blackburn for their backing on the show. We will have daily shows from the England-India Test coming up and daily shows from the West Indies-Australia Test here coming up. Double bubbling. Keep your ears on the feed. Share the posts, and she's doing great work on all of our social feeds. So if you can share some things around, like some things, feed the algorithm, send them to people who might like it, spread the word about the show. We're having a nice time. We'd like more people to have a nice time with us. Do let them know. Otherwise, we love you, and we'll be with you soon.
Yeah, and just make sure that you see if you like anything about the new edits and just the way things are being produced, send your love to Inakshi as well. Show some love to her. Make her feel more welcome.
Let us, the detail always helps. That's it. It's been The Final Word. We'll see you.